Good afternoon. This video is going to go along with task sheet 386. Both these task sheets we're going to kind of go through some diagnostic scenarios, kind of work through some problems, try and figure out a couple different misfires. So I'll show you guys kind of how I do it. I'm not going to necessarily follow along strictly with service information or anything like that. I'm just going to run some tests. And like I said, just kind of show you guys how I do it. If you pull up a misfire document in ALLDATA, it can be pretty generic. There's a lot of different tests. There's a lot of different things that can cause a misfire. So it's got to be a pretty broad document. And I'll try and put an example of that up either in the video or maybe a PDF in the announcements or something like that. But so we're going to start with a misfire on this truck and see if we can't figure out what it is. Alright, so we have a misfire on this vehicle. That's the customer's complaint. Engine's running rough, flashing check engine light. So we have P0300 stored in our PCM, which is just a random misfire. So what we're going to do first, we need to isolate the cylinder that's misfiring. So we've got our scanner here. We're going to start building our vehicle. So we're going to go into the scanner and we're going to build this thing out. We've got a GMC or a 1999, a pickup, a 5.3. Go ahead and load that. We're under 8600. We have no air pump. So now this is our base menu. Pretty much anything involving our drivability kind of stuff is going to be found under engine. So we're going to go into engine. We have our cable connected under the dash. So now we're hooked up. And you may find this misfire information in a few different places. I've seen it. A lot of the GM specific tools I've used in the past, the misfire monitor would actually be under like a functional test. But in this snap-on scanner, it's going to be in data display. So we're going to go to data. You can see we've got misfire data right there. So I'm going to go into the screen and then I'm going to go and start up the truck and we're going to watch these numbers pop up. Alright, so our vehicle's running. It's not running well. But if we look at our misfire data, you can see over to the side we've got cylinder number 3 is counting right up. Cylinder number 1 is also counting pretty well. One thing to note, if you have two cylinders misfiring like this, you got cylinder 1 that's counting up a little bit here and there, but you got number 3 that's counting real steady. So number 3 is the one we're going to want to go after. Sometimes you can get kind of what we call like a sympathetic miss, where number 1 may be firing pretty close to number 3, so it kind of carries over a little bit. So there's not really anything wrong with cylinder 1, but it's still counting a little bit. But number 3 is the one we're after. And you can see as it counts up over time, it'll kind of max out and reset. So there's kind of like cycles to this. So now that we've got our cylinder identified, we can start doing a little bit more focus testing, which, if you remember, focus testing is part of our strategy-based diagnostics. So we're going to shut this thing down and then we're going to take a look under the hood and see what we got going on. Alright guys, so the next step of our process, I want to do a quick spark test. So you may have seen a picture of one of these in the book or the PowerPoint. This is my little adjustable spark tester. You can turn this in or out and set kind of whatever gap that you want. The book says 3/8 to 1/2 inch. So we're going to shoot about somewhere in there. The reason why I'm going to start with a spark test, to be 100% honest with you, is because I'm lazy. I want to do the easiest stuff first and get it out of the way. I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time doing some real complicated testing if I can, find the problem right away with one of these easier tests. So all we're going to do is plug this into the end of the wire. It should kind of clip in there just like a spark plug would. And then we're going to take our other end, our clamp, and we're going to find a ground for this to go to. So I might be able to kind of come over here by the alternator. Here's a bolt right here we may be able to get a ground off of. I don't know if you guys can see that. So this is how our spark tester looks when it's hooked up. We've got one end clamped to ground and the wire on the other end. So we're going to go ahead and start this thing up and see if we get any spark out of this coil. Now that we're running, you guys can see what this spark tester is supposed to look like. It's supposed to have a nice looking spark that's going to come from that gas. Now that might be a little bit large with gas, but we do have a pretty decent spark going on there. We do know we've got some output out of this coil. So we know that our primary side is good, the secondary side of the coil is good, we know we have a good wire. Really all that leaves for our ignition system is to take a look at our spark plugs and maybe swap one side to side. That's what we're going to do. We're going to set this thing down, look at the plug, what looks okay, we're going to swap it with the neighboring cylinder and see what happens. Alright, so I swapped spark plugs side to side. They both looked okay. I started my vehicle back up again and the misfire stayed on that cylinder. So talked about kind of being lazy or doing things the easy way. Well, since we're already down here messing with spark plugs, so we're going to go ahead and run a quick compression test on this thing just while we're here. So we're going to use the same trick that we did the other day. Give this thing a couple cranks and see where we're at. So we're right about 150 on this, so I'm going to call that good compression. So we need to move on to the next step. So we know our ignition system's good. We've got spark out of the coil and the wire. We know our spark plug's good. If we had a bad spark plug, that misfire would have chased or moved to the cylinder that we moved it to. Our compression is good. So we'll keep going here in just a second. Okay, so our next step on this, and this is maybe something you guys covered in fuel systems class, but it's always a good refresher, especially when we're just trying to kind of walk through some of these diagnostic scenarios. So we know our ignition system's good. We did a spark test. We know we've got good spark. We know we have good compression. So we need to keep in mind the things that we need in a real basic way is what do we need for an engine to run? So when you boil it all down, we need fuel, air, and spark. Obviously there's more to it when you really think about it, but we need those few basic things for this thing to run. So we've got spark, we've got air, we've got compression, so really that leaves fuel. So if I was to encounter this problem out in the field, this would be my next step, is to look at the fuel system. So on our scanner, we're going to go into engine. We're going to continue. We're going to go into functional tests. We're going to look at injector balance. It says ensure all fuel lines are connected. We're going to put a fuel pressure gauge on our line, and we're going to cycle these injectors. And what we're looking for, you hook the gauge up and you watch your pressure drop. And you want to record all that and see if there's an injector that isn't flowing as much as the rest of them. So unfortunately I'm missing a seal on my fuel pressure gauge, so I can't show you what happens on the gauge, but we can at least turn on a fuel injector. So what it's going to do when you select one of these injectors, it's going to prime the fuel pump. It's going to prime the fuel system. I already did number 3. It's not going to let me do it again. That was our problem cylinder, but I just kind of want to show you guys this. So we'll go to injector 2. And I'm sure you guys can't hear it, but I could hear my fuel pump kick on, so our system's primed up. You should be able to see that on the fuel pressure gauge when you're actually doing this. So it says injector 2 record fuel pressure reading. So we're going to continue. I don't know if you guys could hear that, but probably 3 or 4 seconds that injector was pulsing. So we want to watch that drop. So what I did to cause a misfire on this vehicle was I unplugged my fuel injector. So I guess kind of the root cause for this scenario would have been a faulty fuel injector. So that's how I go about doing these things. We'll walk through another one here in just a minute for task sheet 712. But that's it for this one. Fill out the sheet the best that you can, and move on to the next.